right, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you to everyone joining us for today's Tech Talk. We're going to be talking about transforming your digital onboarding. And we are going to be recording today's event. We'll share out that recording afterwards via email. Also, please feel free to drop questions into the Q&A feature in Zoom throughout. We're going to address them at the end. So folks who are asking about their questions getting answered, just be assured that we're going to get to as many as we can here at the end. And then those that we don't get to, we'll try to email back answers in the follow-up email as well. So my name is Matt McGowan. I lead one of our sales teams here at Plaid. If you are not familiar, Plaid provides digital infrastructure for financial services. We've been called fintech's plumbers in the past, but what that really means is that we make it really easy, fast, and secure for businesses of all kinds to get connectivity into financial accounts. And we work with close to 3,000 customers today, connecting to over 10,000 financial institutions globally. And we've connected over 200 million bank accounts, which actually means that more than 1 in 4 Americans with a bank account has actually connected their account to another service using Plaid. Zach, tell us all about you.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Smith. I'm the SVP of Product at Chime. I lead our product management, user research, and design teams, and have been in consumer product leadership roles for over a decade. I've always enjoyed working with teams focused on new user experience, early lifecycle work, because I find that so impactful for what you can ultimately get in downstream engagement. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk about digital onboarding. For those of you who may not be super familiar with Chime, we are a consumer fintech, and we provide access to FDIC-insured checking and savings accounts, along with debit cards that we provide on behalf of our bank partners. We've opened more than 8 million accounts, well over that at this point. And we are a digital-only product. And so obviously a seamless onboarding experience through a mobile device or web browser has been a central part of our strategy. And as part of that, we've been partners with Plaid for probably over 5 years at this point. It's hard to believe. We use Plaid products for a whole bunch of different use cases. We use Plaid's identity products to help with fraud prevention. We use your balance product to prevent NSF around ACH transfers that members make between their accounts. But today we're really going to focus on account funding, which is an integral part of our new member experience. And we've been a heavy user of Plaid's link product that allows members to link their other financial institutions and pull and push money, and we'll go into more detail there. So this has been a lot of fun prepping with Matt and team on this, and we're gonna have a good time today. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Zach. Evidently, Chime is truly winning this whole digital banking thing, it seems like, in the US as far as monthly active users go. Maybe tell us quickly what makes Chime such a beloved product among your members.
Sure. I mean, I think from the beginning, the thing that has made Chime such a success is we go really, really deep on understanding who our target audience is, what needs they have in their financial life that aren't addressed, and we just purpose build products on our roadmap to meet those most essential needs. We try to make them as free, fast, secure as possible. And that's just been a recipe for success. And I will say that, in order to get members in the door and experience what we've created at Chime, that onboarding experience is obviously an integral part of introducing folks to the suite of products that we built. And it has been a big part of our success.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that. Of course, we're here to talk about the digital onboarding process, some of the learnings that you've found along the way. And truly anyone with an account opening and funding flow, we think should be able to learn a lot from what we discussed today. But also financial institutions who maybe either at the beginning or focused on accelerating their digital journey should also really get a lot from this conversation. But Zach, what are we going to cover while we're actually here today?
Sure. We're going to talk about 4 topics. We're going to start off with some industry trends and headwinds, specifically why digital onboarding has become so front and center for so many financial institutions and the challenges that can pose. We'll get into talking about the key metrics to optimize if investing in this onboarding experience is something that that's a really high priority for your business. We're going to talk about technology solutions you can plug in fairly easily to dramatically enhance that experience and its effectiveness at drawing in new members. And then we're going to end with 3 steps to get started if this is a sort of journey that you want to embark on in your business.
Awesome. And I would imagine that most folks joining us today probably already have a good sense about why this topic is important, right? But what's the environment that banks and financial services companies are facing today? And really the answer is that consumers are expecting more things than ever from their bank and other financial service providers. They expect their services to be continuous. So what we mean by that is that banking is really now 24/7, right? Digital channels are relied on by 46% of retail banking customers. So it's not just about having an app to check your balance and pay your credit card bill. It's much, much more than that. They also expect everything to be connected. So that means that the primary banking relationship isn't necessarily all things to all people anymore. A bank account, of course, is still the hub or mission control of someone's financial life, which we're going to get into a little bit more later. But here at Plaid, we've actually found that the average checking account has at least 15 apps or services connected to it. So that means that consumers today are engaging with services outside their primary bank for services like personal financial management, investing, peer-to-peer payments, and loans. To be that hub, though, you also still need to connect into the network, which we're also going to talk a little bit about later. And then as it relates to personalization, just because the family banker isn't a part of your life in the same way, at the local branch, doesn't mean that there aren't ways to serve customers in personal and predictive ways. For instance, they really do want insights and recommendations from experts. Maybe that means something digital, machine learning algorithm or something, but truly 85% of consumers are interested in savings tips that are based on their own spending patterns. So given these changes and all the things that an FI could and probably should be doing to transform its business, why is digital onboarding so important?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reason onboarding is important is in this changing landscape, it is your company's first, best, and in many cases, kind of only shot at creating an engaged user base. And that's really the result of 3 related market trends. First of all, consumers are not going to branches in the same way that they used to. In fact, some recent research from BCG, which I found really interesting, showed that at least 1 in 4 consumers are going to use branch locations less or stop visiting them altogether. They're just getting more and more comfortable using these products through a digital medium. And then obviously the current historical moment is only accelerating these trends. In a world where people are not going out into local brick and mortar stores, we see that 2/3 of consumers say that they would use another channel to open an account if a branch was unavailable, which has been the case now for months in many places. It didn't used to be that consumers were comfortable opening something like a bank account product through a purely digital channel, and clearly that has changed. And I would just point out that this is obviously especially true of millennial and younger consumers. 52% of millennials say they would switch banks to get a better online experience because that's the majority of their interaction is through that digital product. So, I think all these trends are just some of the reasons why a digital onboarding experience needs to be so seamless.
Absolutely. And, honestly, I think that all can be a little scary, right? But what I get from that somehow is that, in this crowded, very competitive marketplace, changing needs of consumers, you still do really need to figure out how to become your customer's primary financial institution. And what Plaid continuously hears from its customers is that whoever gets the paycheck, whoever gets that bi-weekly deposit wins. But unfortunately, most new customer accounts actually remain unfunded. So what our customers have been telling us is that somewhere between 60-65% of new accounts actually go unfunded and remain dormant if they aren't required to be funded, which is potentially devastating, given you've likely spent hundreds of dollars to acquire these users just to get them sort of to the front door. And unfortunately, you're likely to never see $1 in return. So it's evident then that if you want to move that needle, if you want to get more accounts funded, the single best lever that you truly have is that digital onboarding flow. Is that how you also see it at Chime, Zach?
Totally. And I think when, if you're going to frame what it takes to create a really compelling digital onboarding experience, one of the words we're going to come back to time and again is really around trust. Trust that it's going to be an excellent experience, that there aren't going to be tech issues or bugs encountered, and they're going to be able to do everything they want to do quickly and easily. And the reason that trust is so important is, first of all, consumers are regularly getting this in other areas of their life. I know, particularly in quarantine, my family's spending way more time on Netflix and Twitter and these digitally native services that have completely just upped the expectation for what a digital experience is. And that carries over to financial services as well. 26% of consumers say that easy enrollment and sign up is their most important criteria for choosing a bank. Is their first experience with that bank, and if that experience does not build trust, that relationship's not gonna go well. And then unfortunately, if they don't get that great online experience, they're ready to switch. A third of customers say they'd be willing to switch to a different bank after a bad online experience. The stakes are really high.
Yeah. So up until now, we've talked about why digital onboarding is your best lever. I think we've established that. Now we want to talk a little bit more about how to optimize it, right? And the place to start is of course going to be knowing exactly what you're optimizing for, and what exactly to be optimizing. So what are the key performance indicators? What are those North Star metrics for optimizing onboarding? And we find that there are three. So conversion, yes, signups, clearly getting people through the process matters. But how many actions are you asking users to take? Panes, screens, fields, clicks. How long is that taking on average? What's maybe the fastest time through, and how do you replicate that for other users? Number two is acquisition. So not just signing up, but does the account actually get funded? Similar though to conversion, how long does it take for a user to fund his or her account? What % of those accounts remain unfunded? And then finally, engagement. So what is the lifetime value? What is the LTV of a customer from this digital channel? Do acquired customers stay engaged by using or buying other products and services that you offer? We definitely find, and you alluded to this earlier, Zach, that the downstream engagement can actually be tied back to upstream experiences like ease of acquisition. And Zach, you've been building amazing customer experiences for years. What does it take to win in this area?
I'd say going back to that trust theme, there's really three parts that we want to cover pretty quickly here that relate back to trust, and it's transparency, security, and speed. Let's talk about transparency first. It's really important to educate your customers from the very beginning and set expectations around onboarding. And that starts by being really clear and transparent about the value prop, both during enrollment. What is it that your service is going to offer that this consumer can't necessarily get anywhere else? As a clear reason to go through this process with you to provide some of the sensitive information. Those clear value propositions and call to actions are going to be important. And then, of course, later on in the onboarding experience, if you want them to link an account via Plaid for funding purposes, being really clear about why this facilitates a really safe, secure, fast experience can build a lot of trust with the customer and improve your conversion rates. I think setting expectations, particularly with digital experiences, which can feel a little like a black box from the outside looking in, is really important. There's an opportunity with these digital onboarding flows to make them really seamless and surprise and delight folks. And if that's true of your experience, be clear about that up front. Hey, this only takes a couple minutes to do. Messaging like that can make a big impact. And then just at the really tactical level, having really thoughtful calls to action and doing a lot of experimentation, which we'll talk more about later, Matt, around that can help you understand what combination of value proposition and calls to action are going to create that sense of transparency that will push users through your funnel. Obviously, you need to talk about security. This is like table stakes, obviously, in our space. If customers don't feel safe with a financial product, they're not going to trust you with their money. That's why I think one of the best practices here is always lead with security. So think about the first page that a member is going to come and hit, whether it's your your bank's landing page, your homepage, or some kind of paid landing page, having a section that talks about security and the steps that you take around data security, transmission, storage, being a priority really reassures people starting off this experience that they can entrust you with their important data. I would go one step further and in certain cases, even clarify your data practices. Why do you need this information? Is it required that you collect it? Are you storing it or selling it? Those, really consistent messaging on that can build trust. And then visual cues are effective. If you've run A/B experiments on these kind of flows, you know that something as simple as adding a lock icon can really remind people that security is top of mind for your business. And there's lots of credentialing providers out there, well-known consumer brands that can perform sort of automatic audits of some of your data practices, and then adding those logos can really help build confidence.
That all feels super important. And at Plaid, our position with our own product is getting users through the Plaid link flow should take fewer pains, fewer screens than, or as few screens and pains as possible, which should generally mean users are more likely to complete that flow. So it's natural to believe that speed and efficiency lead to higher conversion. And yes, like reducing friction in the form of screens and panes, fields, all that stuff should lead to faster account linking and often faster account funding. But you can go too far, right? Because when consumers need to feel educated, and you sort of alluded to this in the transparency piece, or even in the security piece, that need to feel educated, that need to create comfort is so important. So in some cases, more information can be better. So for instance, at Plaid, a couple of years ago, actually, we introduced an additional pane into our link flow. This was meant to provide transparency about what the user was about to share by linking their bank account and to capture their consent. We were positive that this was going to decrease conversion for our customers, but actually had the opposite effect. By being transparent and educating that end user, it engendered trust, and people were most likely to complete the account linking flow than they were before. It's important though as well to, of course, be thoughtful about your forms, information that you're collecting along the way. So can you pre-populate, manual entry of information? That's particularly important if that information is repeated somewhere else. Actually, Plaid has a product called Identity that pulls contact information from what's on file, the source bank account, that we've seen customers really cleverly use to pre-populate like standard fields like name and address and phone number, things like that. So the lesson here is obviously for every additional form or field that you're asking a user to complete, that can be an opportunity for them to drop out of the funnel. So finally here, I think more than any other area, it's important to really test and test this process and test what you built. And Zach, you're going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but I know that for our team, and Zach, maybe you found this too, but the big improvements rarely come from places that you expect, as evidenced by our consent pane experiment in Plaid Link. So the way to do that, the way to set this up so that you're always learning is to A/B test. Continuously having multiple versions of the same process with sometimes large and sometimes actually probably pretty nuanced differences between them. It will help you spot the areas of optimization and adjustment to make. That could be as minimal as the shape or color of a button, or as massive as like the order of data that you're collecting, or when you introduce a call to action. And you guys at Chime have obviously learned a lot over the years and many millions of accounts that you've opened. So what are some of your biggest learnings?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think at this point, Chime has probably been optimizing our onboarding experience going on 6+ years. And yeah, happy to share some best practices here. A lot of them do come back to the 3 themes we just talked about, and doing experimentation to figure out how we can increase transparency, security, speed. And the first thing that I would suggest is you want a dedicated team that's focused on this onboarding experience. It should be a team of engineers, product managers, designers, researchers, working really closely together with a North Star metric. Matt mentioned earlier, a best practice here is looking at enrollment conversion rate. And set aggressive goals every period for that are achievable, and challenge that team to just go and iterate on that experience. They're going to need some tools to be successful. So having an experimentation platform that makes it pretty easy to run some of the A/B experiments that Matt has mentioned is really important. And combine that with an experiment plan that's got specific hypotheses around ways that you think you can increase conversion. And just get into a cadence of running, experiments every week. We do dozens a quarter at least. A couple learnings that we've had kind of specifically from these many experiments we've run. Fewer pages generally equals higher conversion. If you have any experience optimizing a funnel, you'll know you inherently have drop off at every step along the way. So reducing the number of steps generally helps improve conversion, although Matt has mentioned some areas where maybe that's not true. Performance really matters. We talked about speed. Literally just the speed with which a page loads is often a good place to get started here. And you would be really surprised the impact that can have. And the final point I would mention, and we talked a lot about this earlier around transparency and security, is data. These financial onboarding flows are asking for some of the most sensitive information. We're required by law in many cases to collect the data required to identify a user, whether it's social security number, birth date, or something equally sensitive. And again, from the beginning and throughout, providing reassurances about encryption of data transmission and storage and other practices you follow around data privacy is really important. You can see on the right here, by the way, this has been a GIF that's been playing of Chime's onboarding flow. You can go check it out yourself at chime.com, but it really is about a 2-minute experience to open a bank account.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all those learnings and walking us through that. Up until now, we've talked about the environment and the conditions that folks with an account opening flow face, some of the themes, and of course the principles around how to improve onboarding. But what else can you actually do to take some action? One of the things obviously is leveraging technology partners wherever possible. And Plaid is a technology company that provides solutions to materially improve digital onboarding. So as a reminder, Plaid makes it really easy, really fast, and very secure for businesses to get connectivity to financial accounts. And what was, up until a couple of years ago, a very kind of clear delineation between data residing in one place, primarily within banks on the left side here, and the demand for financial data from fintechs on the other, has really evolved into a more circular data network that both parties can tap into and equally benefit from to improve things like account opening and funding. So now banks consume our API to capture data outside their four walls in very much the same way that fintechs do. And how that bears itself out is helping our customers, whether you're a bank or a fintech, deliver data needed to achieve a couple of really, really important things. So as it relates to digital onboarding, that means the ability to instantly link accounts. Generally, that means higher conversion, and higher conversion enables more immediate funding. Reducing risk, preventing fraud, and preventing exposure to fraud in the account linking process. And providing data for other products and services where financial data is also essential. Things like lending, personal financial management, and more can help drive that customer engagement that we talked about and increase the LTV of that customer. So how that works, our role in this process is to enable that connectivity that you're looking for and then get out of the way. So what we're doing is capturing consent, helping users quickly find their source financial institution from the 10,000 plus banks that we cover, establishing that connection by having a user log in using their username and password, confirming that we've made that connection, and then let you and your product experience take over again. So what that looks like is this: users granting consent, finding their bank, permissioning the use of it by logging in, establishing that connection, confirming that it's there, and then again, that's it. That looks really simple, and it is. It's meant to be easy. It's meant to be fast, right, for the user. And fast is what's helped many of our customers grow and provide those excellent experiences for their users. So for instance, Metal is a payments company, and before using Plaid, they actually did a competitive audit of all the solutions in market that could connect to bank accounts to determine what was the fastest. They wanted to get users transacting as soon as possible. And what they found is that Plaid connected accounts in as little as 7 seconds. Compared to some of the other options that they investigated took 32 to 52 seconds. This actually resulted in them getting over 1,000 signups per day when they had initially started with about 100 per day. Also Current, who is a digital bank, found that Plaid was 250 times faster at linking accounts than other existing methods that they had in place. So that included capturing voided checks, manual entry of account and routing information, and then verifying them with microdeposits. So in terms of increasing conversion and the actual funding rates, this is sort of like the next step, right? From instantly linking that account. Shift, who actually sells cars online, they were previously capturing payment information from their customers just with manual entry and microdeposits. Aside from kind of the typical issues that arise with that and the long time that it takes to verify those microdeposits, they saw a 60% improvement in on-the-spot purchases. So people, once they've connected their bank account, like instantly making that decision and pressing go on buying that car. Current, again, in addition to the speed to connection that they saw, which we talked about on the last slide, they also saw 130% improvement in the account funding rate. So really material improvement there. Zach, you guys have seen some good outcomes in terms of engagement too, hasn't it?
That's right. We talked a bit about Chime's enrollment experience, and as soon as enrollment completes, the member downloads our app, and it's time to get them to fund the account so that they trial Chime and get to see all of its benefits. And that's where Plaid has really come in and been an amazing partner for us. We have about 1 in 3 of our active members link an account through Plaid. And what we have found is that of those people who link, they're 3.2 times more likely to fund their account, which again is such an important early part of our life cycle. There are other ways to fund the account. You can go deposit cash or a check, things like that. You can push money in from another bank portal. But people who connect Plaid have such an easier time doing it that they fund at far higher rates. And again, this goes to the point of your early lifecycle experience can have huge downstream impact on engagement. We see those people who do link an account or spend about 5 times more money in their first 12 months on their Chime card. So it really has just been a game changer for us.
Wow. Going back to how we affect the exposure to fraud. Anytime you're moving money, the unfortunate reality is that you're bound to be a target for fraud, right? So especially if you're doing things like maybe offering things that sign up like a cash reward or a referral bonus or something else that fraudsters might be enticed to attempt to game. It's just as important to take the right precautions as it is to go fast. So Wave, which is actually a B2B platform, so they're focused on like accounting, payroll, vendor payments. They dramatically reduced the number of fraud investigations they were doing in a suspected fraud. In the first 6 months of using Plaid, they were able to prevent about $400,000 in confirmed fraud, which is a 60% reduction. Current, again, our friends there were also able to prevent about $400,000 in confirmed fraud in just 6 months by validating that the source bank account connected to the current account was in fact owned by the same individual. So a simple check, a simple verification, but had like really profound impact on their fraud numbers. There's a lot that Plaid can obviously do in this space. And again, we talked about digital onboarding and that being your biggest lever for growth. So I think that's the place where it makes the most sense to start. After you've nailed digital onboarding, of course, we can support you in other areas of your customers' financial lives and life cycles as well. So like lending, providing sufficient data to make credit decisions about your users, whether that's a consumer or a business. Budgeting, we talked back towards the beginning about personal financial management being maybe the next logical service to offer in an area where 85% of consumers are looking for help from their financial institution. Finally, Plaid Exchange, which we actually just announced publicly yesterday. So we talked about being that hub, that mission control of your users' financial lives. So to be that hub, playing nice with the spokes of your customers' financial lives as well is also essential. So Plaid Exchange makes sure that primary bank account is extensible, that the typical checking account, again, connected to over 15 products or services, creates utility, right? So that extensibility creates that utility, meaning that you're more likely to become that primary financial relationship. Plaid's made it really, really easy for banks and digital banks to enable their customers to, again, quickly, easily, and securely make their financial data accessible to the products and services that they choose to use. So Zach, take us home to reinforce the 3 steps we talked about today before we open it up to Q&A.
Yeah, totally. We wanted to kind of distill some of what we talked about today into kind of 3 simple steps to get you started. The first one would just be a pretty simple audit of your current digital onboarding flow. Map out those screens and that experience, compare it to some best-in-class digital onboarding experiences, maybe even outside of financial products, and make a list of your top sort of hypotheses around things you can do to improve, and that will become your experiment plan. With that plan, start to test. Get a team, like I mentioned, spun up, run a couple of those tests and see how much bang for buck there is there. I think you'll be surprised. And obviously don't go it alone. There's a lot of great technology out there. I would say Plaid foremost among it, that can really help make that a seamless experience for users. And there's no reason that you need to reinvent the wheel on that. So with those 3 steps, I think you'll be on your way.
Awesome, Zach. We'll really appreciate you being here for this tech talk. Your insights are just hugely valuable. And if you don't mind sticking around for a couple minutes, there are some questions that I think we can answer for folks.
Awesome. Yeah, let's jump into Q&A.
Awesome. So first question we got is if we have a list of banks in France that the Plaid supports. The answer is yes, we can absolutely point you towards our coverage list. It resides in our documentation, so we can follow up with you on that directly. Another question we got, how do you balance a frictionless onboarding experience with security? For example, ensuring the account opening process is secure and deterring bad actors. So Zach, do you want to kind of start off?
Yeah, I would first acknowledge that doing a digital onboarding experience does create some incremental risks versus requiring someone to come into a bank branch where it's maybe easy to do some identity verification. But I'd also say that at the same time, the technology and other risk signals available to digital products has more than matched that challenge. So when we talked about ways to leverage existing technology to make a really seamless experience, some of that technology is identity verification and risk prediction services that are available out there that will look at data about the member provided during onboarding, even down to the level of the devices that they're using, and really help you understand the risk of a given user. And then you can tailor the kind of the early lifecycle experience accordingly. If you need to do some step-up challenges, things like that, that's quite common in the space. So I would say it definitely creates some challenges, but at the same time, there is some really great technology out there that I believe more than meets those.
Awesome. We got a question. What % of Chime applicants choose to use Plaid? You addressed that. It sounds like about a third, but do you mind kind of contextualizing that? Maybe give a sense for like the other options that consumers have?
Sure. And somebody else asked if Chime was using Plaid's out-of-the-box tool or some kind of custom setup. We use all Plaid UIs. The Plaid team's done a great job making those feel like a pretty seamless part of our app and a really seamless flow. So we use standard Plaid UIs. Yeah, so when members open the Chime app for the first time, they have a range of funding options, but first and foremost among them is the opportunity to link an existing bank account. And once that's done, we actually use Plaid to verify that the identities on both bank accounts match. And that's some of the things Matt was talking about with the ways that their product can help you reduce fraud. And then we, in most cases, we'll then allow people to push and pull money between those accounts at will, and creates just a really great experience. There's no entering account and routing numbers or things like that. And you can see why that's a better experience than maybe some of the alternative ways of funding an account that are just a lot more manual and take a lot more time.
Awesome. Another question we got, broadly speaking, how does security work around APIs? And I can speak for Plaid's API that security, and I mentioned this several times, sort of the secure permissioning of data from a consumer or business bank account to another product or service is part and parcel to our business. So security is a core competency. So we've got a lot of resources that we can share related to our security practices. But generally speaking, we are audited by third parties constantly. We have sort of like annual audits that we need to complete and pass, credentialed audits that display like our ability to securely handle sensitive data. So it's an enormously important part of our business. And if you want to know like more specific details, you can go to plaid.com/security, and also feel free to reach out and we can share some more detail there as well.
Hey, Matt, there's a couple questions about what countries and regions Plaid supports. Can you speak to that quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, Plaid is live in the US, Canada, the UK, Spain, France, and the Netherlands. I might be missing one or two, but there are certainly several markets in Europe live today. US, Canada, UK, all being live as well.
Fantastic.
Sorry, go ahead. Did you have one that you wanted to take, Zach?
No, there's mentioned questions here around how Plaid helps with compliance and know your customer. Matt, do you want to speak to one or two of those use cases? Then I can speak to a little bit around how Chime uses that.
Absolutely. So Plaid is not sort of an end-to-end KYC, know your customer solution. There are a couple pieces of data that Plaid does not collect, for instance, like social and date of birth that tend to be required in those processes. But Chime is a great example of a customer using us as a validation layer in that process. And so Zach, do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys use it?
Yeah, and this is the identity service that Matt provides, and I think is a really important part of the early kind of onboarding experience from a risk management standpoint. It's really powerful to know that a member connected an account and had the credentials for that account, which often includes 2FA. Plaid will often require you to input a code in order to link the account. So now we know that person had their username, their password, and the device on file with that third-party bank. And then using the identity service can verify that information matches the enrollment information provided by the member. It's not that's not KYC per se. KYC occurs during enrollment through other kind of providers. But there's plenty of challenges around synthetic and stolen identities where people can pass KYC, and Plaid provides a really good indicator around risk in the event of a successful link. So I think it's actually an important part of that strategy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. There's a question here that says, why do you think Chime customers spend 5x more in the first 12 months if they link a bank account with Plaid?
It just comes back to that first funding experience. When someone first signs up, they're quite motivated to trial your product. If you make them jump through a bunch of hoops to do so, you might lose an engaged customer who might otherwise be with you for years if they had a really positive early experience. And so the speed with which Plaid facilitates account funding at Chime, I think results in people who might otherwise churn, like really getting to understand the value that we offer really early on, and then go on to be much more engaged with us over the course of the next year. I think that's where a lot of that difference comes from.
Okay. Maybe take one more, if that works for you, Zach. This one says that you mentioned that 65% of new users don't fund their accounts. What steps have worked or not worked to increase funding success, i.e. moving Plaid linking actually into the onboarding flow during KYC? So I can take that to start, and Zach, feel free to provide some additional color. Number one, I think the thing that has improved for our customers, broadly speaking, is giving and prioritizing that instant linking capability. So just as Chime has a variety of ways to fund the account, sort of routing people or steering people towards what it should be the least friction method, and also the one that benefits the recipient, so the business, right, and also equally benefits the customer. The ability to instantly link that account, to get that account going if they've made it that far, right? They have a pretty high intent of wanting to fund that account, so make it easy for them. Give them the best possible choice, and hopefully that is the instant linking that Plaid can provide. But whatever you guys find in your testing and your optimization of that flow, whatever leads to that highest sort of conversion and acquisition rate, prioritize that one in the flow and steer people towards it.
Yeah, and I would just add on that I think that 65% stat of new users who don't fund their accounts is industry wide. I suspect it's that number is much lower, fortunately, for folks that have integrated with Plaid. It's certainly the experience of Chime.
Awesome. We have a bunch of questions about if the recording is going to be available, and if we're going to share the slides. The answer is absolutely yes. For all attendees, we will be sharing this out after the fact. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, but for those of you who weren't on, other questions that we didn't have an opportunity to answer, we're going to try to get our heads together and get answers out to you on as many of these as we possibly can as well. Really appreciate everyone's time this morning, the opportunity to chat with you guys about this this process. The chat with Zach specifically was fantastic. Hope you guys learned a lot today, and definitely want to keep the conversation going if you guys do have additional questions. So thanks everyone for joining us.
Yep, thanks Matt and Plaid team, really appreciate it.